Chapter 1171. Who else? As soon as Lu Jishi said this, people, who had changed their minds due to Shiyu's strength, started to talk about her again. The eyes looking at Shiyu were not amazed and praised, but full of fear and rejection. Qing Wan was trembling with anger, and she said angrily, "Miss Lu, you keep saying that my young master is heartless? Why didn't you say it when Feng Yunqing wanted to kill my young master? When everyone felt that my young master would, and even died in the previous battle, why didn't you show your compassion?" It turns out that Fairy Jishi's kindness and compassion also vary from person to person. Lu Jishi was speechless again for a while. Her eyes turned dark and unsightly. It wasn't that she had nothing to refute, but she thought very highly of herself, and felt that refuting a maid would lower her style. Ren Shualing, who could help her talk usually, was so frightened by Shiyu that she let Jishi be humiliated by a lowly maid. She sneered, stopped Qing Wan, who wanted to talk more, and said lightly, "Does me being heartless related to our core topic today? What I want now is for you to show evidence of my cheating. Who else is dissatisfied now? Stand out now. Otherwise it will be my turn to settle the accounts with you." When Hashi said these words, she was looking at Elder Qin with mockery. The blue veins on Elder Qin's forehead were twitching violently. The boy in green clothes next to Elder Qin stepped forward and said angrily, "Shiyu, so what if your strength is good? That doesn't prove that you didn't sneak in medicinal pills. You can defeat the Black Bear and Feng Yunqing, because you took the secret medicine beforehand." Hashi was about to be amused by the nonsense of this group of people. She pointed at Chen Jianqing and sneered, "You have also seen the fate of those who actually took the secret medicine. You said that I took the secret medicine? Hehe, forgive my ignorance. You can ask our president. Her father is the president of the Doctors Association, and a doctor of the 10th rank. Can anyone answer if there is such a medicinal pill that can increase one's strength by 2 realms without any side effects?" Everyone's eyes couldn't help but look at Chen Jianqing. Needless to say, his strength didn't improve that much, and his miserable appearance was a solid proof. Now, although Chen Jianqing no longer groaned in pain, he was much weaker. Even his cultivation had degenerated to the intermediate stage of the condensation period. Obviously, the side effects were very serious. In fact, the secret medicine Feng Yunqing gave to Chen Jianqing was derived from cold-eating pills. Although it would not be addictive, the side effects of taking it would be more serious, and would occur immediately. Everyone in the square fell silent. Several deans looked at each other and shook their heads. Based on their medical level, it was reasonable to say that they were at the top in Miluo continent, but they had never heard of such a medicinal pill that could improve one's strength in a short period of time. Among the people present, the faces of Elder Qin and the Heaven Medical Branch's dean looked very unsightly. At this time, Heaven Medical Branch Dean even regretted his bowels. He knew that Shiyu was such a genius, and he would not let anyone run away no matter what. Against the gold core stage with the foundation establishment stage, this is even more terrifying than Lu Jishi, a peerless genius that is rare for thousands of years. Chapter 1172. Check assessment papers. The happiest of all was Zheng Shouyue. The more he saw Shiyu, the more delighted he was. He stroked his beard and laughed. How? Now that the fights are over, and the mastermind behind the scenes has also been caught, does Elder Qin have any other ideas? The corner of Elder Qin's mouth twitched for a while, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Having strength does not mean that you didn't cheat. I will investigate this matter carefully. We will dismiss here today." "Wait a minute," Hashi sneered, interrupting Elder Qin's words. "Elder Qin, your high opinion is finished, but I haven't finished speaking yet?" Elder Qin's face was ashen. "What else do you want to say?" Elder Qin is really a busy person who forgets things. Hashi sneered at him. "I applied to check the assessment paper for the written assessment 10 days ago, and Elder Qin said that I will be able to check it after I enter the academy. May I ask, can I check now?" Zheng Shouyue was startled and looked at Hashi. "You want to check the written assessment paper? Is there something wrong with your grades?" Hashi said with a half smile. "Whether there is any problem, we will know if we check it." Zheng Shouyue turned his eyes on Chen Jianqing, who was in a bad state. He suddenly remembered that this Chen Jianqing was the top scorer in the written assessment. He even scored an unprecedented 999 points in the Miracle Healer Academy. Looking at this person with a useless look, he doesn't look like a peerless genius at all. On the other hand, this Shiyu that I like can beat the gold core stage at a young age. Zheng Shouyue's eyes lit up, and he immediately said, "Yes, students do have the right to check their papers. Now everyone is here, why don't you take out the assessment papers and let everyone present be a witness to see if Shiyu cheated or not?" Elder Qin frowned and was about to speak. Then Lu Jishi suddenly stepped forward and said, "Shiyu has her right to check the papers. The papers should be in the Academy Student Council. I'll let someone get them." "Wait," Qing Wan interrupted Lu Jishi mercilessly. "You kept targeting my young master just now. Who knows you will not change the test paper on the way." Zheng Shouyue also nodded immediately, and he waved to the boy behind him. "You go with the secretary of the Academy Student Council. Be sure to bring back the written assessment papers intact." Lu Jishi's face turned green, but she couldn't say a word in the end. Kai Yu and Zhang Chong, who were not far away, looked even more despair than Lu Jishi. Kai Yu's face turned pale for a while. He tried to maintain his composure, but his clenched hands betrayed his emotions. On the other hand, Zhang Chong lowered his head, his body trembled slightly, and his feet kept moving as if he wanted to escape from this place. As for Chen Jianqing on the ground, he already had a mental breakdown, knowing that he could no longer escape. Shiyu's cheating had been dealt with in this square for several hours, but none of the onlookers had left. Everyone was stunned by the twists and turns. The papers of all the examinees were quickly taken over. Elder Qin took the test paper from the Academy Student Council officer and looked at Hushi coldly. "What's your dissatisfaction with your grades? Do you want to tell me that your grade is mistaken with someone else's grade? And it's even Chen Jianqing, who scored 999, right?" Chapter 1173. What kind of genius? Elder Qin's words were full of irony, but Hushi smiled leisurely. Elder Qin is really discerning. You are right. What I want to check is exactly the papers of Chen Jianqing and I. Haha. Elder Qin laughed angrily, looking at her like a lunatic. Shiyu, do you think you are really a genius because you won the gold core stage in a fight? You think your assessment paper has exchanged with Chen Jianqing? How can there be such a coincidence? Hushi smirked without shame, glanced across Kai Yu and Zhang Chong, and said with a slight smile, "Why is Elder Qin so agitated? We will know if our papers had exchanged once we check it. After all, there was an invigilator behind every examinee. Even if the invigilator didn't see clearly, he can always recognize the patterns, right? Of course, it doesn't matter if they can't recognize it. At least, the handwriting of Chen Jianqing and I can always be proofread on the spot, right? If it really doesn't work, we can check all the questions on the paper. Deputy President Kai, what do you think?" Kai Yu raised his head and met Hushi's eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything, only to feel a cold sweat on his back. Guilt and panic surged wildly in his mind. Along the way, Shiyu had brought him too much surprise and shock. If it weren't for Jishi, he would probably only admire such a genius instead of framing her. But now it was too late. Zhang Chong's face was even more ashen, but he was more relieved after the truth was finally exposed. When he thought that Shiyu might check the assessment paper, he was so nervous that he couldn't sleep the whole night. Now that he found that everything could no longer be concealed, he actually felt relieved. Zhang Chong suddenly stepped forward and said, "Shiyu is not wrong. It is indeed because of my mistakes that the two assessment papers were exchanged. The person who really scored 999 points in the assessment was Shiyu, and the one with 503 points was Chen Jianqing." As soon as Zhang Chong said this, the whole square was boiling. A young man at the foundation establishment stage not only won the fight against a gold core stage, but he also scored the highest score in the history of Miracle Healer Academy. This Shiyu, what kind of genius is this Shiyu? Does such a genius really need to cheat? And those deans looked at Shiyu with gleaming eyes, wishing they could snatch her immediately. Having such a genius in their own branches meant that they could shine in the branch competition, and they could rise further. How could they not be moved by this? The Dean of Heaven Medical Branch had gritted his teeth regretfully at this time. He looked at Elder Qin with a vengeful gaze. Such a good seedling that is rarely seen in thousands of years. I actually expelled him. Elder Qin glared at Zhang Chong and said coldly, Zhang Chong, what do you mean by this? Did you collude with Shiyu, so you spoke for him? Miracle Healer Academy's assessment and review process has always been strict. How can the assessment papers be exchanged? You'd better explain it to me. Zhang Chong's face was full of bitterness. He closed his eyes, and when he opened his eyes again, his face was firm. It's all my fault. I accidentally bumped into Deputy President Kai while collecting the papers. I didn't check it carefully when I picked it up and handed the paper. Chapter 1174. Apologize. He bit his lip, glanced at Caillou and continued. After the results were released, I knew that I had made a mistake, but I was afraid that the Academy would hold me accountable, so I never dared to say it. It has nothing to do with Deputy President Kai. He didn't read the content of Shiyu's answer sheet during the assessment, so he didn't know how much Shiyu scored. It was me. I knew that Chen Jianqing couldn't have scored 999 points, but I didn't dare to speak out for fear of being punished. Zhang Chong's voice was slightly sobbing. He lowered his head and said, It is my mistake that caused Shiyu's troubles. I'm willing to accept any punishment. The square was silent, and everyone was looking at Zhang Chong, Lu Jishi, Caillou and others. Someone whispered, That is the most important entrance examination. But the people of the Academy Student Council are actually so irresponsible. Yeah, right. They didn't know the black bear went rampant, and even framed Shiyu for cheating. Does the Academy Student Council have the ability to lead the students of the entire Academy? Did Caillou really not read Shiyu's answer sheet? Then he really wasn't serious in it. Or did he read it and deliberately didn't say it out of jealousy? That Chen Jianqing is too disgusting. He knew that he didn't score that, but he still showed off with the title of top scorer, and even entered the Academy Student Council. No wonder I always feel something wrong in him. Hey, Shiyu is the most pitiful. At first he was framed for cheating, only now he realizes that even his grades have been changed. Lu Jishi bit her lips tightly, feeling that she was enveloped in shame and malice. The Academy Student Council, and she as the president, had always been high and respected at Miracle Healer Academy. But now, everyone was beginning to question their ability and character. She seemed to see the day when she was dragged down from the heaven because of Shiyu. She absolutely wouldn't allow this to happen. At this moment, Caillou suddenly gritted his teeth and took a step forward. This matter is not only Zhang Chong's fault. Lu Jishi suddenly came back to her senses and said without thinking, This incident is the dereliction of duty by our Academy Student Council as a whole, not Zhang Chong's fault alone. Therefore, on behalf of the Academy Student Council, I'm here to apologize to everyone. For Zhang Chong's mistakes, we will also make corresponding penalties. Caillou's face looked pale. He seemed to want to say something, but Lu Jishi grabbed him and stopped him with her eyes. Caillou's eyes swept across Zhang Chong and Shiyu's faces, and he finally lowered his head in shame. Qing Wan sneered and said, President Lu is really strange. The people of your Academy Student Council obviously mistreated my young master. Why are you apologizing to everyone? Before that, shouldn't you apologize to my young master first? Lu Jishi's eyes flickered with darkness for a while. Asking her to apologize to Shiyu was more painful than plucking out her heart. But with so many people looking at her in the square, she couldn't escape at all. Lu Jishi took a deep breath, walked in front of Hushi, and leaned over slowly. Shiyu, I'm sorry. It was our Academy Student Council's misconduct that wronged you. But, she paused and said, Shiyu, if you knew that there was a problem with your score, why didn't you report it to the invigilator as soon as the results of the written assessment were announced? In this way, we can deal with the problem earlier, and it didn't have to develop into the current situation. Can you explain that? Chapter 1175. Joining Huang Medical Branch. When Lu Jishi said this, many people were also puzzled. The difference between 999 points and 503 points is so big. He should have found out right away. Why didn't he bring it up right away? Hashi put her arms around her chest and said with a half-smile, President Lu, are you trying to say that I didn't score 999 points, but it was another person? So, the Academy Student Council not only made a mistake in the scores of 2 people, but even more? Maybe even among the candidates who were eliminated in the first round, there were innocent people who got implicated. They are really unlucky then. Lu Jishi's face was ashen, and she could no longer pretend. She said coldly, Mr. Shi, what does this mean? I'm just talking about facts. Don't normal people ask questions the first time they find out that there is a problem with their grades? I'm so sorry, I'm not a normal person. Hashi smiled lightly. Without the score of 999, I can still be admitted to the Miracle Healer Academy and the Heaven Medical Branch. I'm too lazy to question. Do you have any opinions? If it weren't because someone was too annoying, I wouldn't expose this. After speaking, Hashi turned around and was about to leave, but she was stopped by Dean Li Chengxuan from the Heaven Medical Branch. Student Shi Yu, since it has been proved that your cheating was just a misunderstanding, we will not expel you from Heaven Medical Branch. You will still be a member of Heaven Medical Branch. We will work together in the future. I believe you will definitely have a splendid future. As soon as Li Chengxuan said this, Zheng Shouyue and the boy beside him became nervous. The boy wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Zheng Shouyue. Zheng Shouyue's face looked disappointed, but he didn't say anything. Hashi raised her eyebrows and looked at Dean Li with a mocking smile. Is Dean Li's brain all right? What do you mean by being a member of the Heaven Medical Branch? I remembered clearly that Dean Li personally expelled me from the Heaven Medical Branch. Who do you think I am? You can expel me and recruit me back at your wish? You! Li Chengxuan was so furious that the muscles on his face twitched. He had never been so rudely humiliated by a student before. Shiyu, don't go too far. The best branch of Miracle Healer Academy of Freshmen can stay in his Heaven Medical Branch. By staying in Heaven Medical Branch, only then can you get enough medicinal pills and crystal stones every month, and you can live in the most luxurious dormitory. If you leave Heaven Medical Branch, do you think you can have a future? I'm giving you face to recruit you back and giving you a chance. Thank you Dean Li for the chance. Hashi interrupted Li Chengxuan with a faint smile. But I'm not interested in your chance. I have decided to join Huang Medical Branch. As soon as Hashi's words came out, the other branch deans who were planning to recruit Shiyu in the square immediately looked at each other with ugly expressions. Zheng Shouyue was overjoyed and couldn't believe his ears for a while. Li Chengxuan said viciously, Do you know what kind of place Huang Medical Branch is? There are only wasted people with no future. Even the dean doesn't have any future. Staying in the Huang Medical Branch, no matter how talented you are, you will be ruined for life. You better think about it. Chapter 1176. Draw a good lot. Hashi heard that the Heaven Medical Branch's dean's words were harsh, but it seemed to have no malice. She retrained her arrogant attitude a little and smiled slightly. Thank you Dean Li for your kindness, but when everyone doubts me, only Dean Zheng is willing to take me in. Therefore, my decision will not change. I decided to go to Huang Medical Branch. Li Chengxuan's face turned grim. Finally, he shook his hand fiercely and said, Since you want to ask troubles for yourself as you wish. Seeing Li Chengxuan leaving in annoyance, Zheng Shouyue's excited eyes were slightly red, and his beard was trembling. However, he still remembered to seek justice for his newly received disciple. He squinted at Elder Qin and said, Elder Qin, I will submit a report to the Council of Elders about all the accidents in this assessment. You'd better think about how to explain it to the superior. As for these 2 people, Zheng Shouyue pointed to Feng Yunqing and Chen Jianqing and said coldly, One of them tried to murder my disciple, and the other seized my disciple's achievements. You better handle it properly. Otherwise, don't blame me for causing you trouble. The uproarious cheating incident of Shiyu ended with a dramatic ending. Chun Jianqing and Feng Yunqing, were each detained in the dungeons of Miracle Healer Academy, waiting for their crimes to be reviewed before making their sentences. Zhang Chong, the secretary of the Academy Student Council, got his points deducted and was expelled from the original Earth Medical Branch to Huang Medical Branch. Shi Yu, on the other hand, rejected Heaven Medical Branch's re-invitation and chose to go to Huang Medical Branch, which was tantamount to slapping the face of Heaven Medical Branch in front of everyone. Therefore, when Shi Yu went to the Heaven No. 1 dormitory to pack her luggage, everyone in the Heaven Medical Branch glared at her and wanted to beat her up badly. However, Shi Yu showed her powerful ability in front of everyone, which made the people of the Heaven Medical Branch fearful. Those who really had the capability didn't want to lower themselves to fight with the Foundation establishment stage. So even if they were angry, they could only endure it. The Gold Core stage students in Heaven Medical Branch, who had been severely punished by Shi Yu, couldn't help but grit their teeth and said, "We just let this bitch get away like that? Dean Li and our Heaven Medical Branch are being shamed in public. If we don't teach him a lesson, where should we put our face in the future? Don't worry. How could we just let him go?" The other person sneered and said sinisterly, "Isn't he going to Huang Medical Branch? Of course, he will move into the Huang dormitory. I have already greeted the butlers in charge of drawing a lot for the dormitory. They will definitely help him draw a good lot." "What do you mean?" "Ehe, have you forgotten the cursed one in Huang dormitory? I can guarantee that as long as Shi Yu moves in, he won't be able to survive a night. He will run away like a dog." "Ha ha ha, you are so amazing. You even let Shi Yu and him get the same dormitory. Shi Yu is doomed this time. This is what you get for messing with our Heaven Medical Branch." Hushi was completely unaware of the plot of the Heaven Medical Branch students at this time. She had just received the dormitory location, an inscribed jade slip she had drawn, and she was looking in the direction indicated. Along the way, the surrounding environment became more and more desolate, and the spirit became thinner and thinner. It was completely incomparable to Heaven Medical Branch's beautiful scenes and rich spirit. Chapter 1177. Crazy Qing Wan complained as she walked. Then she frowned and said, "Young master, when you draw a lot for the dormitory just now, why did they look so weird when they saw the room you picked? Could there be something wrong with that room?" Hushi smiled lightly. "I will solve it no matter what trouble it is. There is no need to worry about it." She was sensitive to people's emotions, so how could she not see the strange eyes of the person responsible for drawing lots? This dormitory was likely to be manipulated. But so what? The dormitory that Hushi had drawn was the Huang No. 1 room. As she got closer and closer to the door of her dormitory, the students and the manservants looked at her with more and more strange and puzzled eyes. When they knew that Hushi was staying in the No. 1 room, the doubts in their eyes had changed to pity. When Qing Wan heard their comments that her princess was so pitiful, she was even more worried. "Young master, why don't you wait outside now? I'll go in and see if there is any danger." "Don't worry about them." Hushi smiled lightly. Then she activated the inscribed jade slip and walked in. "Since we are here, let's go in." Qing Wan was still worried about Hushi's safety at first, but when she saw the situation in the dormitory, this worry completely turned into worry for her own master. Huang dormitory was very simple. There was only one barren courtyard and 2 rooms. One was the main room, and the other room was damp and cold. It was full of musty smell and piled with various junks. But in this main room, there was only 1 room in total, and there were 4 beds in it. The room had no other decorations. Qing Wan exclaimed, "Young master, why isn't this 1 room per person? Are you going to share a room with other people? How can it be? This is absolutely not allowed." Hushi was amused by Qing Wan's fussing expression. She reached out and grabbed the bed, and found that it was made of heavenly heart wood, which was very strong. The environment of Huang dormitory couldn't be compared with that of Heaven dormitory at all. But Hushi felt very kind to see such a dormitory, because the beds here were divided into upper and lower berths. In addition to tables and chairs, there were also pill refining furnaces and spirit gathering arrays in the empty space. The beds only occupied a small area. The entire dormitory didn't seem lively. Looking at the dust accumulated on the railings of the beds, she knew that there should be no people here for at least 3 days. Moreover, in the entire room, only the upper berth on the west side had bedding. The other beds were bare. Obviously, she only had one roommate. Hashi said indifferently, Huang dormitory should be a dormitory of 4 people. Unless I leave Huang medical branch, I have to live in the dormitory with others. Qing Wan seemed to be troubled, and she looked at Hashi with a grievance. But you are, if the master finds out that you are sleeping in the same room with another man, master will go crazy. Thinking of Nangong Yu's jealous look, Hashi burst out laughing. Then there was a faint missing in her heart. I seem to not see that guy for a long time. I really miss him a little. She coughed lightly. We cultivators don't need to take a bath, don't need to change clothes. The bed is only used for letting mental power rest. We won't use it at all normally. Most of the real practice and study are in the branch. What does it matter who I live with? Qing Wan, you should stop worrying. Chapter 1178. Dead, yes, but... Qing Wan pouted reluctantly, but she didn't say anything. My princess is so good. What if she attracts another man again? Master will rip off my skin. However, after all, there was no other way. She could only resentfully use magic to clean the room and make the bed for Shiyu before leaving reluctantly. Miracle Healer Academy's student dormitories were, in principle, not for non-students. The students of the upper 4 branches were also allowed to have a servant to serve them because of their luxurious dormitories. However, the students of the lower 4 branches were not so lucky. The servants could only live in a place according to regulations. Miracle Healer Academy implemented competitive education so that people with better strength and better grades get more luxurious treatment. People with insufficient strength could also yearn for a higher quality life. Hashi took Qing Wan to see her residence. Because Qing Wan was a woman and there were not many servants, so her living conditions were good. Hashi was relieved by that. They strolled around the academy for a while. After checking the positions of some enchantments, they returned to their respective dormitories. However, before Hashi got to the door of her dormitory, she found that the students along the way looked at her with mocking eyes. There were also whispering voices from time to time. This kid is so unlucky. Do you think he still has a place to live tonight? Haha, he is already considered lucky. If he happens to meet that person, the end will be even more miserable. Hashi was wondering what they were talking about. When she reached the door of the dormitory, she immediately reacted. Hashi frowned as she saw her beddings that were thrown outside. A young student beside her pitied her, so he said, You should go to the dormitory butler to get a new room. The person inside is really not something you can provoke. But more people were gloating and waiting to see Shiyu's good show. Hashi chuckled lightly, raised her hand, and kept the beddings into the void. Then she swaggered into her courtyard and kicked open the door of the main room. Although Huang Dormitory's dormitory had an enchantment, it was the most simple. Anyone outside the enchantment could clearly see the scene inside. Everyone was stunned by Shiyu's kick. But immediately, many people showed a look of pity or gloating. They felt that Shiyu was dead this time. As soon as Hashi kicked the door, she felt an oppression of a powerful spiritual force rushing toward her. With her real strength that was comparable to the peak of the gold core stage, she almost fell to the ground and vomited blood. Hashi focused her gaze, and her body swayed. The water spiritual power in her body, mixed with a little wood spiritual power, instantly shielded the spirit pressure from her body. It would no longer pose a threat to her. There was a slight from the room. Then the spirit pressure dissipated, and Hashi finally saw the scene in the room clearly. A man in a black shirt was sitting in the room. He looked like he was in his 20s. His facial features were clear like they were carved out of a knife. He was cold and handsome. Only his brows seemed to be coated with a layer of frost, and his pupils were deep like the abyss. When looking at someone else, his gaze didn't contain human emotion at all. Hashi frowned. You threw my things out. Chapter 1179. So what? The man in a black shirt glanced at her, as if he was looking at a dead thing. He said indifferently, "Get lost." Simple words, but it triggered Hushi until she laughed. She had always been used to being arrogant. This was the first time she met a guy who was colder and more arrogant than her. Hushi put her arms around her chest and said with a half-smile, "Why?" The man in a black shirt still looked indifferent as he said, "Want to live, get lost. Want to die, you can also try to stay." "Sorry." Hushi smirked and said coldly, "I don't want to die, but I don't want to get out. So there is another way, you get lost." Hearing this, the man in a black shirt's indifferent eyes finally wavered. He squinted, then he disappeared and attacked Hushi. A cold light flashed in Hushi's eyes, and she moved quickly. For a while, countless afterimages of Hushi surrounded the man in a black shirt. The man in a black shirt raised her eyebrows slightly. The contempt and indifference in his eyes faded a bit, turning into a dignified look. The next moment, countless Hushi attacked the man in a black shirt. The slender jade-like fingers were blooming like tender lotus leaves. But when the attacks approached, they carried a chilling murderous intent. In the dormitory of Miracle Healer Academy, students could cultivate and fight, but they couldn't destroy the building. Therefore, conflicts between students were generally resolved by melee fighting. Otherwise, if a spell was used, the entire dormitory would collapse. Hushi was an assassin in her previous life, so she had full confidence in her melee combat level. So far, except for Nangongyu, she had never lost in pure combat. Even when she fought Feng Yunjing, if it weren't for Heisha Flag in the 100 Herb Cloud Smoke Maze, he could only be beaten by her without a chance to fight back. But the movement and fighting skills of this man in a black shirt shocked Hushi. "I have already exerted all my strength, but the man in a black shirt seems to be at ease." The most important thing was that there was a thin layer of spiritual power on the man in a black shirt's hands and body like an armor. This attack couldn't do any damage to him. However, in Miluo Continent, how many people could turn spiritual power into armor at will? Even the peak of the nascent soul stage might not be able to do it. The man in a black shirt fought with Hushi for a while. Then his spiritual power burst out and shrouded Hushi quickly. Hushi was limited by his spiritual territory, and there was a momentary pause in her movements. A pair of cold and rough palms grabbed her throat instantly, pushing her against the wall. Hushi only felt a sweetness in her throat, and a trace of blood spilled from her mouth. The man's cold breath spouted on her face. The condescending eyes didn't carry a trace of human emotion. "You're not my opponent." In this situation, instead of panicking, Hushi laughed unscrupulously. "Really? But so what?" The man in black was stunned for a moment. He suddenly felt a slight stinging pain on his neck. He lowered his head in astonishment, and he saw that the clothes around his neck had turned into pieces and fell. Between his collarbone and neck, just close to the carotid artery, there was a small wound. Chapter 1180. Allowed to stay. If this wound went deeper, his carotid artery would rupture, although it would not cause fatal injury to him. But the man in a black shirt's eyes turned gloomy slightly. This was the first time he was injured in Miracle Healer Academy. A mere young man, a mere martial artist of the Meridian stage, actually hurt him. That's right. The man in a black shirt saw through Hushi's disguise at a glance. Her true cultivation had reached the pseudo-gold core stage. But so what? Even the nascent soul stage cultivators were nothing like ants in the eyes of the man in a black shirt. The man in a black shirt released his hand, took a step back, looked at her and said, "Your name?" Hushi raised her eyebrows. Her face was pale, and blood was still coming out from her mouth, but her imposing vibe still didn't disappear. She smiled and said, "Before asking someone else's name, shouldn't you tell your name first?" The man in a black shirt frowned, as if he was not used to the way Hushi spoke to him. But he still said, "Xianmu." Hushi smiled slightly, "Xiyu." After introducing herself, Hushi raised her hand, and the dirty beddings appeared in the room. "Excuse me, Brother Xian, what does this mean?" Xianmu frowned again. "I don't like living with others." Hushi was amused by him taking it for granted. "I don't like to live with others too, nor do I want to live with you. But I drew this dormitory, Why did you drive me out? Xianmu's expression was indifferent. He lay down on the bed casually, took out a thick old book in his hand, read it on his own and said, "Because I'm stronger than anyone else. If I don't let them live, they have to get out." "But," he paused and said, "you're very interesting. I allowed you to stay." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the quilt Hushi had thrown on the ground disappeared, replaced by another quilt on her bed. Hushi gasped when she saw the quilt. It turned out to be a silkworm quilt, and it was also a silkworm quilt with 10 kinds of magic circles, such as Spirit Gathering Array and Calm Mind Array. Hushi had only been seen it in record of everything. It was said that sleeping under it would not delay the cultivation, but it could also cultivate one's mind and condense his fundamental essence. If it was put up for auction on the black market, the price could probably reach a sky-high price. This guy just gave it to me casually? For the sky-high price of the silkworm quilt. I will forgive this guy for being rude just now. What did you say? Shiyu was moved to the Huang medical branch, and he stayed in the Huang No. 1 dormitory? Wei Qingyuan looked at He Jiang and He Jian in disbelief and asked loudly, "You better clearly explain what had happened." He Jiang and He Jian bowed their heads guiltily, thinking of their own slandering of Shiyu and Qing Wan's accusations against them. They couldn't hold their heads up. After listening to He Jiang and He Jian's narration, Wei Qingyuan's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. He didn't expect that when he went away for 2 days to treat the important person that Hushi cured, such a thing actually happened to Hushi. But now, it was still fine that Shiyu was sent to the Huang medical branch. The most important thing was that she stayed in the Huang No. 1 dormitory. Wei Qingyuan frowned. "No, I must not let Shiyu live there." "Brother Wei, what's wrong with the No. 1 dormitory? I remember that the dormitories of Huang medical branch are decided by draw lot. There is no good or bad, right?" Chapter 1181. Made a mistake, Wei Qingyuan said irritably. Because the person living in the No. 1 dormitory, no one in the academy, including the elders, dare to mess with him. All the people who stayed in the No. 1 dormitory will be beaten up badly and get kicked out. A few arrogant people even got their cultivation abolished. However, no one can do anything to it. When Wei Qingyuan thought of Shiyu's stubbornness and arrogance, she would definitely get into conflict with him. By then, he couldn't imagine such a result. He Jiang was taken aback by Wei Qingyuan's statement. There is such a person in the academy? But if that's the case, why do they still let students live with that kind of demon? Isn't it better to leave that dormitory to him? Wei Qingyuan sneered with cold intent in his eyes. It seems that it was not enough for someone to drive Shiyu to the Huang medical branch. They even wanted to harm her in this way. I will find someone to settle the account. After that, Wei Qingyuan ignored He Jiang and He Jieyun and walked quickly toward the Academy Student Council. Lu Jishi, come out and discuss this clearly. Wei Qingyuan kicked open the door of the Academy Student Council. He saw Lu Jishi in a meeting at first sight, and he said coldly, "Lu Jishi, why did you frame Shiyu? You drove him to Huang medical branch, and you even put him into the Huang No. 1 dormitory. Do you want to kill her?" Lu Jishi's face was flushed after being scolded by Wei Qingyuan in public. Ren Shuling said angrily, "Wei Qingyuan, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by us framing Shiyu? She is clearly the one who humiliated our Academy Student Council in public." Wei Qingyuan sneered. "Isn't it because your Academy Student Council first made a mistake in her assessment paper, and then slandered her for cheating? This can also be called framing? It's obviously a statement of facts." Ren Shuling was so angry that he almost went wild. The other officers of the Academy Student Council were also indignant. On the contrary, Lu Jishi had calmed down at this time. She took 2 steps forward and apologized to Wei Qingyuan with a guilty face. "Brother Wei, I'm also very sorry for the mistakes made by the Academy Student Council in the entrance assessment. I didn't expect everything to be such a coincidence. Because we didn't check carefully, we had already apologized to Shiyu for the damage we caused in the end. I hope Brother Wei can forgive Jishi too." Lu Jishi's words were sincere, and Wei Qingyuan's anger subsided a little. He also didn't believe that Lu Zixi would deliberately frame Shiyu, and everything might just be an accident. But when he thought about Shiyu's current situation, he couldn't help being indignant for his friend. Wei Qingyuan took a deep breath and said, "Even if the cheating in the assessment is a misunderstanding, what about the dormitory? Why was Shiyu assigned to the Huang No?" "One dormitory. Huang number 1. Lu Zixi said in surprise, "Isn't that person's dormitory? But I remember that this dormitory has long been out of the draw lot." I also want to know, why did Shiyu move in the dormitory that obviously can't be drawn in the lottery? Someone is clearly trying to harm Shiyu. Student-related affairs are all in charge of your Academy Student Council. You dare say that your Academy Student Council people didn't do any trick in this? Hearing this, Lu Zixi lowered her eyes and said with a sad face, "Brother Wei, you really misunderstood us. How could we do such a thing? The allocation of dormitories is only a trivial matter, and it is not directly under Academy Student Council. Maybe the butler of the dormitory in Huang Dormitory made a mistake." Chapter 1182. "It's pretty good here seeing that Wei Qingyuan was still angry," Lu Zixi said softly. "Well, I'll accompany Brother Wei to the Huang Dormitory and let Shiyu redraw the dormitory. Is this acceptable for you?" Wei Qingyuan was very anxious. He was afraid that Shiyu had already died in the hands of that evil Xian Mu. The name was quite new at Miracle Healer Academy, because he hardly appeared in any classroom or competition. However, when mentioning the evil of the Huang Dormitory, almost everyone in the academy knew. Before everyone experienced his power, many people had been crippled by him. However, the elders and even Dean didn't dare to provoke him. No one would stand up for the injured students. If Shiyu was really crippled by Xian Mu, he couldn't even complain to anyone. However, as soon as Wei Qingyuan and Lu Zixi arrived at the door of the Huang number 1 dormitory, they saw that the door was shut. There was a group of people surrounding the door. They all looked weird. They pointed at the door, but they didn't dare to get close. Wei Qingyuan quickly pulled someone over and asked, "Where's Shiyu? Did he come here?" The man who was pulled looked strange. He pointed to the courtyard and said, "He is in there for 1 hour." The point was that they didn't hear anything except the sound of the fight at the beginning. Could it be that Shiyu was beaten to death by that evil? But even if he was beaten to death, his body and belongings should be thrown out, right? Wei Qingyuan was shocked. He was about to break into the courtyard desperately. The enchantment in Huang Dormitory's courtyard was so rubbish that anyone with some skills could break in at will. "Brother Wei, don't be impulsive." Lu Zixi stopped him quickly. "You can't break into this place casually. Don't lose your life for Shiyu." Lu Zixi said worriedly, but her eyes squinted slightly. "It's better that Shiyu dies in the hands of Xian Mu. As for Wei Qingyuan, although I don't like this man, and I hate him for being close to Shiyu, this man has a special status and could be useful in the future." Wei Qingyuan threw Lu Zixi away and was about to enter the dormitory desperately, only to see the door suddenly opened. A young man in a blue robe slowly walked out of the room. His face was like snow and his eyebrows were like paintings. Walking under this dark night, he looked like a fairy transfigured by the bright moonlight. Wei Qingyuan stared blankly at the young man walking toward him. He was in a trance for a moment. The onlookers were also amazed that they even forgot to be shocked. How did this person come out alive? Of all the people present, only Lu Zixi was full of resentment. Her clenched fists almost broke her well-maintained nails. It wasn't until the door of the courtyard was opened, and the boy stood in front of him, that Wei Qingyuan suddenly came back to his senses. He grabbed his hand and said, "Shiyu, let's leave this dormitory immediately. I will apply for a new dormitory room for you." She frowned. Why? She thought it was pretty good here. After getting a silk quilt with 10 arrays, Wei Qingyuan said anxiously, "The person who lives here isn't easy to get along with. In short, you must not stay this place. I have already told Jishi that this is their mistake, and she will help you change a dormitory. Chapter 1183. No need. Lu Jishi was aggrieved, but she still smiled brightly. Shiyu, I'm so sorry. This is a mistake of our Academy Student Council. If you want, we can change you a dormitory. Before Hushi could speak, a young man in the crowd said with disdain, Are you Academy Student Council doing your job? How can you make so many mistakes? First, you made a mistake in other people's grades, and now you say you assigned the wrong dormitory. Who knows if you are intentional or not? If you aren't, then you are incapable, right? Don't stay in this position if you are incapable, lest you harm others and yourself. As soon as the young man said that, the onlookers immediately burst into laughter. The students in their area were all students of Huang Medical Branch, which could be said to be an outlier in the entire academy. The unequal treatment encountered in the academy had created their cynical character. If it was described with the words in Hushi's previous life, hatred for the rich. Therefore, Lu Jishi was admired and praised by everyone in the whole academy, but it would not work in this Huang Medical Branch. Lu Jishi looked extremely ugly, but she had always been very self-restrained. She didn't want to lower herself to care about this group of people. She could only look at Hushi and said, Shiyu, let's go to the dormitory manager to draw lots again? No need. Hushi said casually. It's good to live here. I won't move again. After all, who knows, if I move again, there will be a bigger accident. Wouldn't I lose more than gain? Hushi's words meant something, and the students of Huang Medical Branch on the side understood it. They all laughed out loud. Wei Qingyuan said anxiously, No, you can't live here. You don't see any danger, because the person in the house hasn't come back. Why don't you just move to my place? My courtyard is big and Wei. There are many empty rooms there. I can guarantee your safety if you stay there. When Wei Qingyuan said such a proposal, he suddenly felt hot in his heart. Thinking of living in the same yard with Shiyu, practicing together and discussing together, he felt that the future was bright, and his cheeks flushed slightly. Lu Jishi looked at Wei Qingyuan's reaction with a cold hint in her eyes, and she smiled. It turns out that Shiyu doesn't want to draw lot again, because he wants to live in Heaven Dormitory. But this is understandable. After all, Huang Dormitory can't absolutely compare with the Tianziho Dormitory. Lu Jishi's words made everyone look at Hushi strangely. Hushi glanced at Lu Jishi with a sneer. Before she could speak, a handsome man in a black shirt slowly walked out of the courtyard. As soon as everyone saw him, they were terrified. They stepped back quickly, as if they would be hurt if they got close. Wei Qingyuan pulled Hushi and wanted to back away, but Hushi broke free and stayed where she was. When Lu Jishi saw the man in a black shirt, her heart throbbed slightly. He felt the man's strength so strong that she could only look up to him. But she forced herself to not get back. When Xianmu walked out, he glanced at Lu Jishi and Wei Qingyuan, frowned slightly, and finally stood beside Hushi. If you let other people in the dormitory, I will throw you out. When he was about to leave, Lu Jishi hurriedly stepped forward and said, Senior Xian, I'm sorry. It was our fault that Shiyu lived in your dormitory. We will arrange him to another place immediately. Chapter 1184. Is she courting death? Xianmu looked at her coldly and said indifferently, Get lost, don't get in my way. When he said this, Xianmu's eyes swept across Wei Qingyuan and the crowd watching from a distance. But he didn't look so fierce when looking at Shiyu. The meaning of those words was self-evident. Everyone was stunned by the scene. There was silence around the dormitory area, and no one returned to their senses for a long time. Seeing that Xianmu was about to leave, Hushi suddenly frowned and said, I'm a light sleeper. If you come back late, it's best not to wake me up. Xianmu paused. The surrounding atmosphere fell into a terrifying silence. Everyone thought Shiyu was crazy. She is actually requesting or warning Xianmu. Is he courting death? But Hushi felt that this was normal. Since they were roommates, it meant that they had to get along for a long time. Of course, the taboos and habits between each other should be made clear. Compromise if possible. If it can't, then resolve it by force. Isn't this a normal thing? Xianmu only paused for a moment and did not look back, but a faint voice came. N. Then his figure disappeared instantly. N. It's over with just N? What is this development? When did Xianmu become so easy to talk? What about those unlucky guys whose cultivation is abolished? Are they all just unlucky? Everyone looked at Shiyu with not only shock but admiration, complete admiration. To be able to live with an evil like Xianmu, and to be accepted by Xianmu. Who is Shiyu really? Only Wei Qingyuan, and Lu Zixi felt unhappy in the audience. However, Wei Qingyuan only regretted not being able to live in the same dormitory with Shiyu. But after confirming the safety of his friend, he quickly put that regret behind him. He just told Shiyu over and over again that if she was bullied, she must tell him. If she was not used to this place, she must tell her. But Lu Zixi only felt that there were countless bugs eating her heart, which made the jealousy in her heart grow while being bugged. At Miracle Healer Academy, I have always been high and respected. However, because of this Shiyu, I have been told to get away by men over and over again. Why do all these people regard Shiyu as a treasure, but they speak ill of me? How can I, Lu Zixi, be inferior to Shiyu? If things go on like this, maybe Shiyu will take away all my edge like in Yangon City again, and I will be trampled by her fame in the end. No, I will never allow this to happen again. In the remote courtyard of Miracle Healer Academy, Hushi sat in front of the stone table with her fingers on Zhang Yi's wrist. She was calm and focused. Zhang Yi stared at Hushi anxiously. His hand beside him clenched and relaxed over and over again. His palm was full of sweat, although he felt that his illness was almost cured. He still felt anxious. What if Shiyu says it will relapse? Even more nervous than Zhang Yi was the master guard who originally guarded the yard. At this time, his eyes looking at Hushi were no longer contemptuous at the beginning, but they were filled with anticipation and tension. His eyes were almost fixed on Shiyu, hoping that she could say the answer he wanted to hear. Finally, Hushi retracted her hand and smiled. Little E, congratulations, your disease has been completely cured and will not recur. Chapter 1185. Threaten me again, really? Zhang Yi almost jumped up with joy. The pair of sparkling eyes were filled with joy. Brother Shiyu, then I don't have to worry about relapses in the future? I can live a normal life? Hushi nodded. With red eyes, Zhang Yi stood up and bowed deeply to Hushi and Wei Qingyuan. Brother Shiyu, Brother Wei, thank you. Without you, I don't know how long I would have to suffer from this pain. Wei Qingyuan smiled and said, Little E, since you have recovered, you can go to the academy to study normally. I have already gotten a place for you to study in the Heaven Medical Branch. You have a strong talent for beast taming. Heaven Medical Branch Dean Li has always wanted to recruit professionals in all aspects, so he has agreed to your admission. Zhang Yi blushed and looked at Hushi. Brother Shiyu, what branch are you from? You're so good, you must be from Heaven Medical Branch, right? As soon as Zhang Yi said this, Wei Qingyuan's face turned ugly. The fact that Shiyu was kicked out of Heaven Medical Branch made him feel extremely bad these days. Hushi smiled lightly. No, I'm from Huang Medical Branch. Huang Medical Branch? Why? Zhang Yi exclaimed. Seeing that Wei Qingyuan and Hushi didn't speak, he suddenly said, Then I'm going to Huang Medical Branch too. Wei Qingyuan sighed. Little E, don't be impulsive. The situation in Huang Medical Branch is very complicated. There are simply not enough elders to teach in the branch. And those students are also very different. You can't exert your talents at all. Shiyu goes to Huang Medical Branch is also due to special circumstances. Seeing Zhang Yi insisting, Wei Qingyuan suddenly smiled and said, Little E, didn't you say you have a brother in Heaven Medical Branch? Why don't you ask your brother first to see what he thinks? As soon as Zhang Yi thought of his brother, he jumped up 3 feet high excitedly. Yes, Brother. He has been worrying about my illness. I've been missing for so long, he must be very anxious. I'm going to tell him the good news right away. When Zhang Yi was about to rush to the door, he was stopped by the expert guard. The guard's expression was cold and aloof. Just a cold look made Zhang Yi instinctively step back. The originally excited smile all turned into fear. The guard said coldly, "When you enter the academy, remember what you can say and what you can't say. If you dare to reveal anything that shouldn't be disclosed, I guarantee that your end will be 100 times worse than your illness." Zhang Yi shivered all over, nodded desperately, and dared not say a word. Wei Qingyuan smiled. "Uncle Chiu, don't worry, little E is a sensible child. He won't talk nonsense." This was the first time Hushi knew the title of this expert guard, Uncle Chiu. Hearing Wei Qingyuan's words, Uncle Chiu nodded. Zhang Yi felt as if he had been granted amnesty, and left the courtyard in a hurry. In the small courtyard, only Wei Qingyuan, Hushi and Uncle Chiu were left. Uncle Chiu glanced at Hushi lightly, and he said solemnly, "I will report the situation here truthfully to His Honor. You have him get ready and wait for His Honor's summon." Wei Qingyuan bowed and said, "Yes." Uncle Chiu squinted and looked at Hushi coldly. "You better remember, whether what you see or hear here or in other places in the future, what can be said and what can't be said. If you dare to say one more word, if you threaten me one more time." Hushi turned around and looked at the man with a sneer. "Even if you have anything to do with Wei Qingyuan, don't expect me to save people." Chapter 1186. Try it you. Do you know who you're talking to? Uncle Chiu glared angrily. He had never met anyone who dared to speak to him like this in this academy. Hushi sneered. "I'm not interested in knowing who I'm talking to. All I know is that none of your people can cure this disease, only I can cure it. I only treat based on my personal preference. Whoever made me happy, I will save even without paying me. If I'm offended, even if you kill me, I won't treat no matter how. Do you want to try it?" Uncle Chiu was stunned for a moment, then his eyes filled with coldness and murderous intent. "Just a mere doctor. A kid of the foundation establishment stage. How dare you speak so shamelessly? Do you believe that I'll crush your bones right now, and let you taste the taste of living hell?" Hushi raised her eyebrows, and she exuded a powerful spiritual power. Her black hair fluttered without wind. "Great. Let's try it now. It's just that even if I really die, your so-called His Honor can only endure the torment of the disease from time to time, and go down to hell with me in the end." Hushi's temperament had always been arrogant to those who forced her. She could ignore those weaklings' slander, because she didn't put them in her eyes at all. If someone wanted to force her to submit, it would only happen in their dreams. Wei Qingyuan was so frightened that his heart almost jumped out, so he rushed between them and said loudly, "Uncle Chiu, calm down. Shiyu's temperament has always been like this. Please don't be bothered with him. Now, Shiyu is the only one who can cure His Honor's illness. Do you really want to ruin His Honor's chance of recovery, just because of a spur of the moment?" Uncle Chiu also calmed down at this time, looking at Hushi with complicated eyes. This kid is obviously not at the foundation establishment stage, but his spirit pressure even made me at the peak of the nascent soul stage feel a little threatened. This young man seems to have some skills. He squinted and said, "I hope you really have the ability to cure His Honor." After he finished speaking, he disappeared from the small courtyard in a flash. Seeing that the person disappeared, Hushi turned her hostile gaze to Wei Qingyuan. Wei Qingyuan smirked, leaned over and said, "Shiyu, don't be angry. I didn't mean to hide from you. It's just that the identity of His Honor is really special. I don't dare to talk without permission." Hushi squinted and said, "This His Honor is in Miracle Healer Academy? Where does he live?" Wei Qingyuan was a little strange by Hushi's question, but he still answered, "He is indeed in Miracle Healer Academy. He lives in Bai Jingshuan, which is the garden in the enchantment on the south side of Miracle Healer Academy. It's just I can't really mention the identity of His Honor. Shiyu, are you willing to heal him?" As long as you heal him, you will definitely be able to get great convenience in Miracle Healer Academy. Wei Qingyuan asked very carefully. He already knew her character. She only persisted her own way, and she would not change her attitude for any power or public opinion. He was really afraid that she would refuse to treat the big man, and he was even more afraid that she would be angry because of his deception. Unexpectedly, Hashi smiled and said, "Okay, I'll treat. When His Honor summons you, you can inform me." Beijing Pavilion? I remember that this place is a forbidden area, that I couldn't when I was investigating the academy. Maybe Wu Qi is there. So of course I have to take a look. Chapter 1187. Cold World. Zhang Yi hurried to Heaven Medical Branch and asked someone to inquire about his brother Zhang Chong's whereabouts. Anyone who heard Zhang Chong's name all looked contempt. Zhang Chong, he was kicked out of Heaven Medical Branch for making a big mistake. He can never come back in his life. What? Zhang Yi said anxiously. Then where is my brother? Hee. Where else can the people who got expelled go? Of course, it's the garbage center of Miracle Healer Academy, Huang Medical Branch? Zhang Yi murmured, Huang Medical Branch? Isn't that the branch where Brother Shiyu is? The person who answered Zhang Yi's question couldn't help but looked him up and down. Then he frowned and said, "Are you Zhang Chong's younger brother Zhang Yi? Didn't he say you've been missing for a long time? Why did you suddenly appear?" How would Zhang Yi answer his question? He hurriedly ran straight to Huang Medical Branch. At this time, Zhang Chong, who was in the Huang Medical Branch, was drunk. He stumbled and fell on the corner of the backyard of the branch. A group of students from Huang Medical Branch all frowned because of the smell of alcohol from him. Someone glanced at him and exclaimed, "Isn't this Zhang Chong, the officer of the Academy Student Council? Why is he so drunk here?" "What Academy Student Council officer?" Another person sneered. "You didn't know? He made a mistake, was kicked out from the Academy Student Council and Heaven Medical Branch. Now he is just a trash from the Huang Medical Branch. Even worse than us." Haha, it turns out that he has fallen. Look at him. How does he have the look of a gold core stage senior? He is also very pitiful. He was expelled from Heaven Medical Branch, and no one helped him at all. I heard that the officers who worked together in the Academy Student Council spat on him when they saw him. What's more, the people in Huang Medical Branch despised the privileged people the most. He has no place in it at all. Haha, his future is really sad. Their voices gradually faded away, but those words seemed to remain in Zhang Chong's ears. Now he finally realized what it meant to be in a cold world. After being expelled from Heaven Medical Branch, his fellows of the Academy Student Council, who once called him a brother, and all his previous classmates looked down on him and alienated him. The students from the lower branch who flattered him before, all came to trample him and humiliate him. People from Huang Medical Branch looked down on the Academy Student Council's officer like him, so they naturally would not welcome him. Even everyone in the dormitory united and threw his bed into the utility room. Zhang Chong really felt the gap from heaven to hell. But these were not the saddest for him. The saddest thing was that he was now in such a state of despair that he no longer had the ability to find his younger brother. His younger brother Zhang, he had been ill since childhood, and there was no way to find a cure outside. That's why Zhang Chong and his brother worked so hard to get into the Miracle Healer Academy. But when they entered the Miracle Healer Academy, his younger brother disappeared for no reason. He had been searching for years in Miracle Healer Academy and still couldn't find him. Now that he ended up in such a situation, there was even no hope. Brother, it's really you." A boy's excited voice suddenly came from his ear. "Brother, how did you become like this?" Zhang Chong raised his head in a trance, and he saw a familiar face in his drunken eyes. It was the face he had thought about countless times day and night, the face of his younger brother. Chapter 1188. Guilty, he smiled. Am I drunk enough to have hallucinations now? Brother. Woo, brother, I'm sorry for you. Not only did I not find you, but I also put shame. Also, there is no way to shine on the lintel for our Zhang family. Brother, I'm sorry for you. Brother, wake up, I'm back. The young man kept shaking Zhang Chang's shoulders. In a hurry, he quickly condensed a ball of water spiritual power and poured it on Zhang Chang's face. Zhang Chong was drenched in water and finally woke up. When he was sure that the person in front of him was really Zhang Yi, he trembled with excitement. Little E, is it really you? Zhang Yihong nodded and nodded. Brother, it's me. It's really me. My illness has been cured. I can live a normal life from now on, and I can study with you. Brother, I'm back. Zhang Chong couldn't bear it any longer. He hugged his younger brother and cried lowly. What did you say? She cured you? Zhang Chong exclaimed in disbelief after listening to his brother's narration. Because there was no way to disclose what happened in the small courtyard, Zhang Yi could only lie that he was isolated because of his illness. Until recently, he met a good person with superb medical skills and completely cured his illness. And the person who cured him, Zhang Yi did not hide it, was Shiyu. Hearing Zhang Yi excitedly and gratefully describe the process of Shiyu's treatment of his illness, Zhang Chang's heart was almost eaten up by guilt. Originally, Brother Wei was going to put me in the Heaven Medical Branch because I'm very talented in beast training. But I heard that Brother Shiyu was kicked out of the Heaven Medical Branch because he was framed, and now he is in Huang Medical Branch. So I also really want to go to Huang Medical Branch. It just happens that you are here. That would be great. I don't want to go to Heaven Medical Branch, where they blame indiscriminately. Zhang Chong closed his eyes with a sad look. If the younger brother knew that I was the one who framed his savior, how sad would he be? Will he still forgive himself? And Shiyu, who saved my younger brother, what about him? Because of a mistake. Not to mention I changed Shiyu's grades and kept it a secret out of fear. Later, I also hide the key information for fear of affecting Caillou. In the second assessment, no one knew better than him and Caillou what Shiyu had done and what kind of injustice he had endured. Although Shiyu would not be expelled from Miracle Healer Academy for cheating, there were still many people in the academy who reject her. There was no other reason because in the image released by Elder Qin, people were afraid of the fact that Shiyu letting him die. She also didn't tell the 5 spiritual pill. So many people still had doubts and felt that she was still cheating. However, Shiyu, did he cheat? Did he not help him? There has never been. No one knows this fact better than himself. Shiyu's amazing talent and his innocence. Zhang Chong clenched his hands, and divine sense lightly touched a recording talisman. All the shadow summoning stones were collected after the assessment, whether they were damaged or intact. But at that time, Zhang Chong didn't like Chen Jianqing very much, so he secretly copied a copy of Chen Jianqing's image in case of emergency. As soon as Shiyu's cheating broke out, Zhang Chong wanted to take out the recording talisman. However, Caillou actually served as a witness to Shiyu's cheating and joined other students to submit an application for Shiyu's expulsion. Chapter 1189. Dungeon. Caillou was Zhang Chong's benefactor. He could gain a firm foothold in Miracle Healer Academy, was inseparable from Caillou's help and guidance. Even his admission to the Academy Student Council was recommended by Caillou. If he exposed the image of Chen Jianqing, it meant that Caillou was lying, and it would naturally ruin Caillou's reputation. How could he do this? There was a pain of struggle in Zhang Chong's eyes. Looking at his younger brother's clear eyes, he slowly lowered his head. The dungeon of Miracle Healer Academy was similar to Spirit Sealing Prison. It was heavily guarded here, and ordinary people couldn't enter without authorization, and those who were locked inside may never see the daylight again. The guards of the dungeon were standing at the door, chatting with boredom. Suddenly, 2 figures were approaching. When the guard saw the young man, He immediately smiled and said, Deputy President Kai, you come to the dungeon again to collect fire? Caillou nodded with a smile, but his face was a little pale. His hands were even tightly gripping his clothes. Caillou used fire to refine pill. He specialized in refining offensive pills that targeted soul. This was a very important talent in the Miracle Healer Academy, and it was also the reason that he could be the Academy Student Council's deputy president. However, the maintenance of fire was different from ordinary spiritual fire. It needed to be nourished by grievances and spirits. Therefore, Caillou had received special approval from the Academy, and often went to dungeon to cultivate and nourish fire. The guards didn't stop, and quickly let Caillou in. However, seeing a small figure following Caillou, someone couldn't help but ask, "Who is this?" Caillou forced a smile. "It's my new boy. I need him to help with some spiritual herbs today." After saying these, the guards naturally did not stop them, and quickly let them in. However, after Caillou and the figure left, they didn't run to the usual training place, but they went straight in one direction, and finally stopped in front of a cell. The short figure was originally wearing a cloak, but when he removed the cloak, a pretty face was revealed. It was Lu Jishi. The people locked in the cell were Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing. Caillou said in a low voice, "Jishi, there are people patrolling the dungeon every day. If someone finds you coming in secretly..." Lu Jishi smiled softly and said, "Thank you, Caillou, for taking the risk to bring me in." She smiled and stared at Caillou with watery eyes as if filling with infinite gratitude. "Don't worry. I just have a few words to ask them, it won't take long. If anyone finds out, I won't drag you down." "Jishi, don't say that." Caillou looked at her with sincerity immediately, and he said excitedly, "I'm willing to do all this for you. To be able to protect you, I'm very happy." Lu Jishi's cheek flushed as she lowered her head. Caillou suppressed his pounding heart and said softly, "I'll go to the usual training place first. Jishi, come over immediately after you've finished your question." Lu Jishi nodded. After Caillou's figure completely disappeared, Lu Jishi set her eyes on the two in the prison. Feng Yunqing's eyes were cold and she sneered, "Fairy Jishi, the president of the Academy Student Council, why are you here?" Chapter 1190. Why did they die? Chen Jianqing also woke up at this time. He crawled over to Lu Jishi and cried while saying, "Fairy Jishi, President, save me, save me." Lu Jishi brushed her robes and smiled faintly. "Feng Yunqing, Chen Jianqing, don't you all hate Shiyu and wish him to die? I'll give you this opportunity to personally drag Shiyu into hell with you guys. What do you think?" Feng Yunqing's eyes lit up when she heard the words. She saw Lu Jishi's cold and indifferent gaze and her gentle smile, and a chill went down her spine. What do you want to do?" Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing were dead. Their injuries suddenly went worse, and their bodies festered. They died extremely miserably. As soon as the news came out, the students of the entire Miracle Healer Academy were in an uproar again. A rumor spread quickly in Miracle Healer Academy. "Have you heard? When Shiyu and Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing were fighting, they were poisoned, and it will only be triggered until 3 days later, so they both died so miserably." "No way. Why does Shiyu do such a thing? He must be afraid that his cheating will be exposed. That 999 assessment paper isn't Shiyu's at all." Chen Jianqing knew the truth, so he was silenced. Also, the 5 spiritual pill in the second assessment. Shiyu didn't explain exactly how it came from. "Right. That's right. Besides, he didn't help his team member in the elusive forest. Such a vicious person, it's not uncommon for him to poison someone." You haven't seen the tragic state of Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing. It's really horrible. Their skin was peeling off inch by inch. Shiyu is so vicious, so what if he has a great talent? If this kind of person stays in the academy, maybe we will be poisoned by him one day. He will pay for that. This matter must be thoroughly investigated by the academy. If Shiyu did it, he must pay the price. That's right. Put him in the dungeon too, so he can't come out for the rest of his life. Zhang Chong blankly listened to the voices of the people passing by, and his face turned pale as he stood in place in a daze. He was still struggling with whether to repay Shiyu for saving his brother's life, or repay Caillou's kindness. But now he could no longer hesitate. He could no longer be a coward. Zhang Chong clenched his fists abruptly. The flame of determination flashed in his eyes as he ran toward the cafeteria not far away. Miracle Healer Academy Student Council. Caillou entered Lu Zhixi's room. He said with a trembling voice, "Zhixi, what's going on? Why did Feng Yunqing and Chen Jianqing die? Did you do something?" Lu Zhixi's eyes widened in shock. Her face was full of hurt, and her body became unstable. "Caillou, are you doubting me? Am I such a vicious person in your heart?" As Lu Zhixi said, there were tears in her eyes, and her face was pale. She looked really sad and pitiful. Caillou immediately dispelled his doubt and quickly said, "Zhixi, that's not what I meant. How can I doubt you? It's just that he knew better than anyone that Shiyu wouldn't kill them, because he didn't have to. However, why did Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing die?" The truth is revealed, and it is after Zhixi went to visit them. Lu Zhixi took out the silk handkerchief, wiped her tears and said softly, "Caillou, no matter who did this, Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing are both dead now. And it is even after you and I went in. If people investigate thoroughly, it will affect you. So, the only way now is to make Shiyu take this charge." She stepped forward and grabbed the young man's hand for the first time. She pleaded earnestly, "Caillou, I don't want anything to happen to you. So we can only let Shiyu bear this crime. You know what I mean?" There was a chill in Caillou's heart, but the girl's earnest eyes made his heart turbulent. "Everything is going in the direction that I don't want to see the most. But can I say everything? No, absolutely not. So I should let Shiyu die? I should let Shiyu take the charge of murdering his classmates?" There was pain in Caillou's eyes. For the first time he began to hate what he had done. Miracle Healer Academy Cafeteria. Miracle Healer Academy of course had a cafeteria that sold spiritual food. Otherwise, if everyone relied on cultivation and medicinal pills to fill their stomachs, it would be too hard. Therefore, although the cafeteria here was not too prosperous, there were still countless students entering and leaving every day. After Zhang Chong came to the cafeteria, without hesitation, he activated the recording talisman with spiritual power. It was noon at this time, and there were always students coming and going in the cafeteria. Many people were still indignantly discussing the deaths of Feng Yunqing and Chen Jianqing, clamoring to punish Shiyu for killing. But suddenly, a bright light appeared above the center of the canteen. Then in the originally empty air, the scene of the jungle field began to play. The images recorded by the shadow calling stones had figures, so when images were reproduced, there was naturally sound. A man's voice quickly resounded in the cafeteria. "Shiyu? How come there are so many medicinal pills?" Appearing in the image were Chen Jianqing and Wang Hai lying on the cliff above the valley. The perspective of the image also switched with the vision of Chen Jianqing and Wang Hai, and it finally landed slowly at the bottom of the valley. There, a handsome boy was wiping the sweat off his face while opening the pill refining furnace. What appeared in the pill refining furnace were dozens of medicinal pills with transparent color. Just by looking at the shape and color, everyone could tell that they were the 5 spiritual pills. The people watching this scene in the cafeteria were stunned. Some people couldn't help shouting, "Didn't they say that the 5 spiritual pills were brought in by Shiyu cheating? Isn't this clearly refined by Shiyu himself?" Moreover, more than 30 grade 4 medicinal pills were made in one furnace, and he was using the low-grade pill refining furnace. How superb is Shiyu's pill refining level? Just now everyone was cursing Shiyu collectively, but at this moment, they were all shocked by the content played in the image. No one would suspect that the image was fake. Even a refined master couldn't fake an image record, not to mention, it was so flawless. However, the shock this video brought to them did not end at all. Immediately afterward, Chen Jianqing and Wang Hai in the video began to plan how to snatch Shiyu's medicinal pills and kill her. They taunted the poison spiritual bee, led poison spiritual bee to Shiyu, and wanted to make Shiyu die in an accident. Chapter 1192. Something bad. Fortunately, Shiyu was very vigilant. When she saw the poison spiritual bees were chasing Chen Jianqing and Wang Hai, everyone in the cafeteria let out a burst of happy laughter. Someone couldn't help but said angrily, "It turns out that Chen Jianqing is such a scum. He not only stole someone else's result, he even murdered his teammate. Even if this kind of person died, he deserved it." Wang Hai too. He was the one who plotted against Shiyu first. It's right for Shiyu to stand by and watch him die. Before these people's speculations were finished, they saw Chen Jianqing come to the river. Seeing that the two were about to be overtaken by poison spiritual bees, Chen Jianqing let Wang Hai die for him, and climbed up. Afterward, when Chen Xiaoying and others came over, Chen Jianqing lied to them. And everyone else believed Chen Jianqing's nonsense and accused Shiyu. It was like everyone who was watching the image at the moment. The voice of discussion gradually faded. Although the image was still playing, everyone looked at each other with shame and remorse on their faces. They didn't even dare to look up to face the handsome young man in the image. Zhang Chong looked at everyone's reaction, and a smile finally appeared on his face. He wiped the tears from his eyes and murmured, "Little E, brother can finally do something for you." Academy Student Council's office space. Lu Jishi sat at the top, glanced at the officers sitting below with a bit of solemnity on her face, and sighed softly. "I believe everyone has heard about the accidental death of Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing. The incident has already had a huge impact on Miracle Healer Academy, making everyone feel uneasy, lest they will be the next. I have already investigated with Deputy President Kai. Before Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing died, no one had visited. That proves that they were not killed after being put in prison, but when they were fighting with Shiyu. At that time, the root cause had already been planted. We have never had such a blatant crime in the academy, so we must investigate this matter thoroughly. Shiyu's murder motive is sufficient, and he has the most suspicion. So I, in the name of the Academy Student Council's president, now request to put him in jail to wait for his trial. Does anyone have any opinion on this?" The officials below, except for the haggard-faced Caillou, all nodded. Ren Shuling was even more excited. "We should have dealt with this damn Shiyu long ago. If we let him continue to do whatever he wants at Miracle Healer Academy, will our Academy Student Council still have face?" Before Ren Shuling could finish speaking, the office door was slammed open. A young man rushed in with panic, and he said while panting, "President, Deputy President, something bad happens." Lu Jishi frowned. She was displeased that the matter she had been looking forward to was interrupted. Ren Shuling even said angrily, "Didn't you see that it's an important meeting time? Why did you run in Rashi and say something bad happened?" The young man didn't seem to hear Ren Shuling's words at all. He just looked at Caillou with a panicked look. Then he swallowed and said, "President, Deputy President, the cafeteria. The cafeteria is now in an uproar. About Shiyu's cheating, the matter has now spread out. Everyone is calling Deputy President to give an explanation." Chapter 1193. Infuriated Lu Jishi's brows twitched suddenly. She stood up abruptly, and she almost lost control of her facial expression. What do you mean? Make it clear. Caillou's body shuddered heavily, but then he seemed to be relieved. He made a desperate and relieved smile on his face. The same thing happened in the elder meeting. Because of the death of Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng, the elders and the branch deans were discussing on how to handle Shiyu. Elder Qin strongly demanded that Shiyu be imprisoned for inspection. He believed that the deaths of Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng were absolutely inseparable from Shiyu. Zheng Shouyuan naturally strongly objected. You said that they were killed by Shiyu. What evidence do you have? If there is no evidence, don't even think of arresting my student. The opinion of the elders was also divided into two factions. Some agreed that Shiyu should be arrested first, while others believed that a thorough investigation should be carried out first. Elder Qin said with a sneer, I have long felt that Shiyu's performance in the assessment was strange. It was because of this rat that we had many accidents in this assessment. The death of Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing is definitely the case. He planned it long ago to silence their mouth. Such a vicious person. I will never agree to let him continue to move freely in the academy. But the elders' opinions had not been unified, so the boy in green clothes hurried in. Master, something big happens in the cafeteria. Elder Qin and others hurried to the cafeteria. They saw a group of students gathered around. Each of them was with righteous indignation. Almost everyone was talking about Shiyu. He just hurried over before he could hear Qing's words. When he saw everyone was talking about Shiyu angrily, he immediately said angrily, Did you see? Shiyu is just a rat. Let him stay in the academy. Before the words of Elder Qin were finished, the image in the air played again and again. The clear replay of that scene stunned all the elders present, and it also made Lu Zixi and Ren Shuling, who had just arrived, look pale. They almost fell down. Elder Qin regained his senses and said angrily, Who put this up? Who is it? Zhang Chong walked out of the crowd slowly, holding the activated recording talisman in his hand. His face was pale, but his eyes were very clear and persistent. Elders, deans, I played this image. Who told you to play it? Elder Qin slapped him angrily. Did you collude with Shiyu? You deliberately broadcast some forged evidence for him. And you even incited your classmates. You people are so disgusting. You still don't want to admit you're cheating and hurting your classmates? You must be expelled, immediately expel. Zhang Chong staggered when he was beaten, and the image of the recording talisman also disappeared. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. But he bit his teeth and immediately input spiritual power again, and the image in the air appeared again. Elder Qin was trembling with anger. He was about to slap Zhang Chong to death, when he suddenly found that the surroundings were eerily quiet. All eyes were on him with suspicion, scrutiny, and disapproval. Even those students looked at him with no respect anymore. And more of them were indignant. Elder Qin suddenly panicked, and Zhang Chong had stood up from the ground at this time. His voice was clear and authentic. Everyone knows that I was the invigilator of Chen Jiancheng, so I knew what he did in the elusive forest. Chapter 1194. Guilty. I hated what he did at the time, so I recorded this image with a recording talisman, hoping that Chen Jianqing would not be so arrogant. But I didn't expect that these images would become the only evidence to prove Shiyu's innocence. Because Deputy President Kai is my benefactor, I once did not want my testimony to bring disaster to him. But this time I really can't remain silent. Zhang Chong gritted his teeth and raised his head to look at everyone around him. Shiyu is innocent. His talent, his demeanor, are beyond the reach of all the other candidates. He didn't cheat, let alone letting his peers die without helping. On the contrary, he almost sacrificed his own life in order to keep them alive. Why would such a person cheat? Is it necessary to cheat? How could such a person bother with Chen Jiancheng and Feng Yunqing, the two useless rats? Why would he need to kill them? Do you still believe that kind of speculation after watching this image? Everyone was a little excited. They nodded in agreement with Zhang Chong's words. Elder Qin said angrily, Zhang Chong, do you know that copying the contents of the recording stone without authorization and revealing the secrets of the academy will be severely punished? I'll give you another chance. Did she let you forge this image? It doesn't matter. I've already gone all out. Zhang Chong suddenly raised his voice. I dare to promise with my life that the image I released is absolutely true. Elder Qin, do you dare to release the recording stone in the hands of Deputy President Caillou? All the survivors' recording stones will be inspected by the elders. Especially you, the chief invigilator of this assessment, Elder Qin. I don't believe that none of you found out that Shiyu was wronged. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar in the audience. If everyone's attitude toward Elder Qin was just skeptical, now it had become a question filled with righteous indignation. The Miracle Healer Academy assessment, known as the fairest, turned out to be such a shady scene. Allowing other students to frame an amazing genius. How terrible was this incident? Elder Qin looked around. His body trembled with fear, and his clenched palms were full of cold sweat. He shouted sternly toward the boy in green clothes behind him. Ah Qing, arrest this man who disturbed the order of the academy immediately. Hurry up. Wait. Zheng Shoyue took a step forward and said coldly, Elder Qin, are you guilty? We haven't figured it out yet. How can you arrest this kid? Zheng Shoyue, do you have to go against me? What does this have to do with you? Zheng Shoyue smirked and said, why not? Did you forget? This Zhang Chong was expelled from Heaven Medical Branch a few days ago, and is now under my Huang Medical Branch. Since he is a student of Huang Medical Branch, he is my pupil. How is it not related to me? Elder Qin's face turned pale, and the other elders also looked at him with doubts. Li Qingquan of the Heaven Medical Branch even said coldly, Elder Qin, you'd better explain this matter clearly. If you have reviewed all the recording stones, it is impossible that a student is falsely accused. Are you really framing Shiyu on purpose? Chapter 1195. Admit no. I'm not. Elder Qin stepped back in panic and said incoherently, this image must have been forged by someone. Caillou, don't you know what his character is? How could he do such a thing? Shiyu must have forged the image. Zheng Shoyue sneered and said, we will know whether it is fake after Dean Huang checks it. Dean Huang is a master in forging and talisman. If he can't judge that the image is fake, then it must be true. By the way, since we have to check, I think it would be better to check all the recording stones of the candidates in this assessment, right? Elder Qin staggered and almost fell down. His face was pale. Dean Huang, who was named, touched his beard and walked forward calmly. He took the recording talisman in Zhang Chong's hand and checked it. Then he shook his head decisively and said, these images do not show any signs of alteration. They are real records. Dean Huang's words made the little bit of hope in Elder Qin's heart vanish in an instant, and he sat down on a chair. There were only 2 words in his mind. It's over. After confirming the authenticity of the image, everyone's attention turned to the Academy Student Council. In this incident, Elder Qin could only be considered an accomplice at most. The person who really did such a nasty thing was the invigilator of the Academy Student Council. And he was the deputy president, Caillou, who was once admired by everyone at Miracle Healer Academy. After the crowd Lu Jishi Caillou, Ren Shuling and others slowly stepped forward. Ren Shuling was full of resentment and deep concern for Caillou. Caillou's face was pale, and his steps were unstable, but there was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth that seemed to give up everything. Lu Jishi walked at the front. Her eyes were flickering. When she stopped, a dark and decisive light flashed in her eyes. She finally made up her mind. Because of Zhang Chong's announcement of the recording stone, Everyone was outraged by what Caillou did in the entrance assessment this time. However, seeing his appearance at this time, many people's hearts were filled with disbelief and intolerance. That was Caillou, the gentle and helpful Academy Student Council's deputy president. He had a high cultivation base and a high position, but he never bullied others. Many people had received his help. Even in the minds of some students, the prestige of the Caillou Kai deputy president was even higher than that of President Liu Zixi. Such Caillou, would he really do such a dirty thing? Ren Shuling was even more anxious. She glared at Zhang Chong and said angrily, "Zhang Chong, have you forgotten how Brother Caillou helped you before? How can you repay your kindness like this? Did Xiyu ask you to do it? That's why you framed Brother Caillou like this." Zhang Chong's eyes were red when he saw Caillou, and he couldn't help but cry. "Deputy President, I'm sorry for you. Don't say it anymore." Caillou interrupted Zhang Chong's voice gently, revealing a wry smile. "Zhang Chong, you've done enough for me. It's me who should say sorry." After finishing speaking, Caillou looked at all the students around and said in a low but clear voice, "I admit that it was me who changed Shiyu's written assessment results. I know Shiyu's talent. I saw the process of her pill refining and the process of saving people, and I deliberately pretended not to see it. I did all this, and I'm willing to accept any punishment." Chapter 1196. Voluntary now. When it was finally exposed, he actually felt a sense of relief. As soon as Caillou said this, the entire cafeteria was in an uproar again. Some people said in disbelief, "Caillou, we trust you so much in the Academy Student Council. Is this how you manage students? I still don't believe that Deputy President Kai would do such a thing. Do you have any difficulties?" Ren Shuling remembered her complaints against Caillou at the beginning, and when Caillou made up his mind, she cried heavily. She complained Shiyu with Caillou with the intention of letting Caillou drive Shiyu out of the Miracle Healer Academy. But she never thought that doing so would make Caillou be condemned by everyone. Ren Shuling cried, grabbed Caillou's arm and said, "Brother Caillou, is it because I told you what Shiyu did to senior sister?" Before Ren Shuling could finish her words, she felt a hand on her shoulder, preventing her from continuing. Liu Zixi looked at her with calm and sad eyes, but there was a hint of determination that was difficult to detect. "Xue Ling, you shouldn't be involved in this. Chen Gang, take Shuling back first." One of the officers of the Academy Student Council, who was standing behind Liu Zixi, immediately stepped forward and took Ren Shuling out of the cafeteria while comforting her. At this time, everyone in the cafeteria's condemnation of Caillou had reached its peak. The most resentful was Dean Li Qingquan of Heaven Medical Branch. "Caillou, you are also considered an elite in Miracle Healer Academy. Don't you know the consequences of doing these things? Not to mention you exchanged the grades of Shiyu and Chen Jiancheng. You even lied about Shiyu's talent in refining pill, and framed him for cheating. How much grievance does Shiyu have with you? You want to frame him like this?" Caillou shook his head with a wry smile. "I didn't know Shiyu at all before this assessment." "Then why on earth are you doing this?" Caillou glanced at Liu Zixi and saw that Liu Zixi was looking at him pitifully. He felt pain in his heart. He secretly thought, what he did was voluntary and had nothing to do with Zixi. Why should I tell the truth to implicate Zixi? Thinking of this, Caillou closed his eyes and said with shame, "I changed the assessment papers just because I was jealous." Seeing that Shiyu answered almost all the questions right at a young age, if he entered the academy, he would steal my limelight. "What? Just because of jealousy? How can you do such a thing? Caillou, we are so disappointed in you." The students' and teachers' accusations drifted into his, making Caillou look even more shameful. However, Liu Zixi breathed a sigh of relief, and a faint smile appeared on her mouth again. Li Qingquan slammed the table beside, And he said, "So you also framed Shiyu for cheating because of jealousy." Before Caillou could say anything, Elder Qin suddenly stood up and said angrily, "Caillou, I didn't expect you to do such a thing. You've made this year's entrance examination a mess. You don't need to say anything more. Put him into the dungeon and wait for the result of the sentence." Chapter 1197. Instructed by Elder Qin was about to order his disciple to arrest him. But Zheng Shoyue took a step forward and sneered. "Elder Qin, didn't you just say that the recording stone was forged by Shiyu? Why do you say that everything is Caillou's fault now? Shouldn't we listen to Caillou's explanation?" Elder Qin's face turned pale. He wanted to speak, but Zheng Shoyue's hand was on his wrist, and the pressure of spiritual power made him unable to say a word. Caillou took a deep breath. Without any hesitation, he said solemnly, "After the results of the second assessment came out, I was really jealous of Shiyu's outstanding talent, and I also concealed her talent in pill refining. But I didn't think of framing Shiyu for cheating, because no one knows better than me that those 5 spiritual pills are really made by Shiyu. However, Elder Qin suddenly found me, and he asked me to tell the investigating elder that I monitored Shiyu all the way and never saw him refine any pill. Moreover, he also took Shiyu's recording stone and extracted the footage that would be unfavorable to Shiyu." You liar!" Elder Qin jumped up anxiously. "Caillou, you dare to talk nonsense. I will slap you to death right now." However, before Elder Qin jumped up, he was restrained by Zheng Shoyue. Zheng Shoyue half smiled and said, "Elder Qin, you seem really desperate. Can't you just let Caillou finish his words?" Huang Din, who was in charge of forging, appreciated Caillou's talent the most. He couldn't help asking, "Caillou, do you mean Elder Qin instructed you to frame Shiyu and her from the Miracle Healer Academy? Do you have evidence? Besides, why did Elder Qin do this?" Caillou looked mad, but he glanced at Elder Qin in fear before saying slowly, "I heard that Shiyu and the Feng family have a deep hatred. Moreover, there is one thing the students who participated in the assessment that day all know. When Shiyu was trapped in the elusive forest and her life or death was unknown, many students hoped that Shiyu could survive. But Elder Qin insisted on closing the teleportation array early. It seemed like he wanted Shiyu to die immediately. I can also testify about this." Zhang Chong immediately stepped forward and said, "The assessment still have a few hours before ending, and Shiyu's recording stone was still intact. It just couldn't be activated. But Elder Qin wanted us to close the teleportation array. We even went into conflict with Shiyu's servant." Soon, the freshmen in the cafeteria, He Jiang and He Jian, also stood up and testified. Elder Qin's eyes were full of anger and fear, and his voice was stuttering. You all. I'm an elder," Caillou said in a low voice. "Shiyu's recording stone is still in Elder Qin's hand, and Shiyu's inscribed jade slip has not broken. As long as the inscribed jade slip is activated, the recording stone will sense it even if it is kept in the storage bag. Elder Qin, do you dare to deny this fact?" Elder Qin screamed, "Ah!" staggered and fell on the chair again. His rapid and messy breathing indicated his fear and despair. This time, everyone understood that what Caillou said was true. Zheng Shoyue sneered and said with a frosty face, "So you also caused the death of Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing? And you want to blame Shiyu for their deaths?" Chapter 1198. The Real Murderer? No. It's not me. Elder Qin was shocked when he heard the words, and he shouted anxiously, "You can go check it out. I have never been in the dungeon, and I'm not qualified to enter the dungeon. How could I kill these two people?" Framing someone for cheating and killing someone to silence them were two different things. Even if it was confirmed that he had framed Shiyu for cheating and disrupted the assessments of Miracle Healer Academy, he would at most be kicked out of the academy. But if it was confirmed that he killed someone, he would definitely be severely punished by the Miracle Healer Academy. At that time, let alone the possibility of cultivation abolishment, he might not even survive the punishment. Thinking of this, Elder Qin's voice became even more anxious. "I've been refining pill in my room for the past few days. Qing and my other disciples can testify. I definitely didn't kill them." Zheng Shouyue and Li Chengquan confirmed from Qing and others that Elder Qin did not leave the room or go to the dungeon. He definitely couldn't kill them. However, it could never be Shiyu, Zheng Shouyue resolutely said. Shiyu has never done those things at all, so the reason for killing them is naturally untenable. Besides, if Shiyu wants to kill them, wouldn't it be more reasonable and less suspicious for Shiyu to kill them in the practice match? Everyone nodded when they heard the words. After so many things, a fool could see that Shiyu was a victim. Elder Ji, who was in charge of punishment, frowned and said solemnly, "Since it wasn't done by Elder Qin, investigate one by one. Who had been in the dungeon during this time, and who poisoned Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng? If someone is suspicious before and after Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng were poisoned, investigate that clearly. I don't believe that I can't find the real murderer." Saying that, Elder Ji snorted coldly with a fierce gaze. "Dare to commit murder in my Miracle Healer Academy? Simply tired of living?" Caillou's face suddenly turned pale. He looked at Lu Jishi with worry in his eyes. But to his surprise, this time Lu Jishi didn't look at him. Instead, she looked indifferent, like it wasn't related to him. There was even a slight smile on her face. Just when Caillou was astonished, a short man with a quirky appearance suddenly walked out from behind Lu Jishi. Caillou recognized him. He was Jiang Zhongqing, an officer who just joined the Academy Student Council last year. Jiang Zhongqing had the word loyalty in his name, but his personality was cunning. He was good at seeing the wind. He was somehow valued by Lu Jishi half a year ago. Although Caillou was not worried, he would not object to such a trivial matter. So why does Jiang Zhongqing want to do at this time? Jiang Zhongqing bowed to a few deans and elders before saying with a complicated look, "I don't know if I should say this." "It's about the death of Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng." Elder Ji said immediately, "Say it." Jiang Zhongqing glanced at Caillou, gritted his teeth and said unbearably, "The night before Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng died, I once saw Deputy President Kai went to the dungeon." "What? Is this true?" Jiang Zhongqing looked at Caillou with guilt. "Deputy President Kai, don't blame me. Just like Zhang Chong. Although I don't want to hurt you, but my conscience won't let me lie. I can only be frank about this matter." Elder Ji's eyes were shining as he glared at Caillou. "It's really you who killed Feng Yunqing and Chen Jiancheng?" Caillou blurted out, "Of course not. I definitely didn't kill anyone." Chapter 1199. Caillou couldn't believe it before Elder Ji finished speaking. Jiang Zhongqing sighed and shook his head. "Deputy President Kai, it has already come to this point. Stop being stubborn anymore. We can call the guard of the dungeon and ask whether you had been to the dungeon that day." Caillou's face turned pale, and he said in a trembling voice, "I had been to the dungeon, but I went to refine pill. I have been refining pill there all the time. Everyone knows it." Jiang Zhongqing sneered. "Deputy President Kai, I know you haven't been able to calm down to refine pill for several days. Why did you suddenly feel in the mood to refine pill? And just the day after you went, Chen Jianqing and Feng Yunqing were dead. Isn't this too coincidental?" Elder Ji's face turned gloomy, and he said to the boy beside him, "Call the guards of the dungeon immediately." Soon, the guards of the dungeon were called over. When they heard the question, they immediately said, "Yes, Deputy President Kai has indeed been to the dungeon." Another guard hesitated for a moment and said, "Moreover, the prison head said that Deputy President Kai did not go to the place of pill refining immediately, but he went to the dungeon where Feng Yunqing and the others were staying for a while." "Kaiyu, what else do you have to say?" Elder Ji was furious. He looked at Kaiyu with cold gaze. "How dare you kill people in Miracle Healer Academy? You're so bold." "No, I didn't. It's really not me." Kaiyu looked at Lu Jishi in a panic. His eyes were full of pleading and helplessness. Jishi. He hoped that Lu Jishi could clarify for him. If he just framed Shiyu, he would at most be kicked out of Miracle Healer Academy, or be expelled to the Huang Medical Branch. But if he killed students for no reason, the punishment was not something he could bear. Lu Jishi's long eyelashes trembled. There seemed to be sadness and disappointment in her eyes. "Kaiyu, you really disappointed me so much. I believed in you so many times. For you, I asked for a petition to expel Shiyu. But I didn't expect you to even kill the students. Kaiyu, is this how you repay my trust?" Lu Jishi's words made Kaiyu's body tremble violently. His whole body swayed gently, and he was almost speechless. He felt that he must have heard it wrong. He thought it was just a dream. "Lu Jishi, my goddess, the girl I like, how could she say such a thing? She knows that I didn't kill them. She knows that I did it for her. But she ruthlessly pushes him into the abyss of hell. No, no. How could this be the fairy Jishi in my mind? How could this be the goddess I had admired for so many years?" But soon, everything was brutally shattered like a dream. People from the Academy Student Council gathered around to comfort the crying Lu Jishi, and Jiang Zhongqing even said, "President, it's not worth being sad for this kind of person. Because of him, our Academy Student Council's reputation has been ruined now. President, you've done enough for him. You don't have to care about this kind of scum in the future. Yes, he even killed his classmates. It makes me horrified to think that I was working with him. Fortunately, his evil deeds have been discovered now. I believe the elders will definitely make a public judgment." Lu Jishi wiped away her tears, stepped forward, slightly bowed towards Elder Ji, Li Qingquan and others, and said in a sobbing tone, "Jishi is incompetent and didn't manage my subordinate properly. The Academy Student Council actually had such a ruthless person. This even implicated Shiyu. Jishi really has no face to face the elders." Chapter 1200. Hopeless Elder Ji still had a good impression of this God's favored pretty girl. Hearing this, he immediately comforted her warmly. "This matter is caused by Kaiyu's own jealousy. It has nothing to do with you, Jishi, so you don't need to blame yourself for this kind of person." Only then did Lu Jishi stand up, showing a pale and weak smile. Elder Ji coldly looked at the hopeless Kaiyu and Elder Qin and said coldly, "Okay, now that the truth is out, this is the end of the matter." Elder Qin failed to do his duty in supervising the entrance assessment and framed student. All his duties will be removed and his elder privilege will be deprived. The Elder Council will decide his stay or leave. When Elder Qin heard the words, his face turned ashen, and he collapsed onto the chair. This meant that the result of his expulsion from Miracle Healer Academy had been confirmed. As for Kaiyu, Elder Ji's eyes were like lightning, and his voice seemed to be ice cold. Because of jealousy, he disturbed the normal assessment, framed his classmate for cheating, and he even killed for fear that the incident would be exposed. The evidence is conclusive. According to the rules of the Academy, Kaiyu will be exiled to the Spirit Extinct Valley. He will not be able to return without a summon. What? Spirit Extinct Valley? And there is no set return period. Isn't this the equivalent of putting Kaiyu to death? Everyone gasped when they heard the words. Spirit Extinct Valley, was one of the forbidden places of Miracle Healer Academy. Not only there was no spirit in it, but it was filled with evil spirits, which could erode the dantian and meridians of martial artists. Moreover, the people who were once expelled to the Spirit Extinct Valley had either died long ago, or they had become madmen with ruthless and irrational nature. It could be said that no normal person could survive in the Spirit Extinct Valley. Caillou was expelled to the Spirit Extinct Valley. Even if he didn't die, he would definitely become a waste, or he would be even more miserable than death. When Caillou heard the words, he was in despair. He slowly closed his eyes and said nothing. There was a saying that it was worse than death when one has nothing to live for. Huang Din couldn't bear it. With Caillou's talent, he should have done a lot. Isn't such punishment too heavy for him? Elder Ji snorted coldly. Talent can't be used as an excuse for making mistakes. If he committed murder, then he should pay for it. Does Huang Din still want to plead for him? Soon, someone stepped forward to take both Caillou and Elder Qin away. Huang Din followed quietly and stopped Caillou before he was about to be sent into the Spirit Extinct Valley. Caillou, tell me, did you really kill Feng Yunqing and Chen Jianqing? When Caillou heard this, he couldn't bear it any longer. Two lines of hot tears rolled down. Din Huang, if I said I didn't do it, would anyone still believe me? No, no one will believe me anymore. Din Huang sighed. Your forging talent is one of the best even in the entire Miracle Healer Academy. Especially your forging direction is so special. I originally hoped to train you to become a talent, and finally send it to the upper realm. But I didn't expect such a thing would happen. Caillou bowed his head in shame. His tears dropped on the ground drop by drop, and he sobbed. Din Huang, I'm sorry to let down your high hopes. I did things that went against my conscience for the unworthy person, but I was thrown away like a garbage. If I have another chance to choose. What? What does it mean for the unworthy? Caillou shook his head with an ashen face and said nothing. He walked toward the enchantment of the Spirit Extinct Valley. Chapter 1201. Division of Labor. Din Huang stepped forward, stuffed a green bead into his hand without being noticed, and said in a low voice, You must persevere. I will plead with Din, and hope that he will release you. Caillou was stunned. He subconsciously clenched the bead before being pushed into the enchantment by the people of Elder Ji. Passing through the enchantment, the mellow spiritual power disappeared, and the cold evil spirit rushed toward him. It was like hell on one side and heaven on the other. Caillou closed his eyes and felt the faint energy emanating from the green beads. This energy enveloped his mind and dantian, preventing his mind and dantian from being eroded by the evil spirit. However, this kind of protection was a drop in the bucket after all. It was like a tiny little flame in a violent storm that would go out at any time. Caillou looked down at the bead. The light in his eyes disappeared under the reflection of the black evil spirit and the green bead. Go back? I can still go back. There had been a lot of noise in Miracle Healer Academy lately, and almost everything was Hushi related. But Hushi didn't seem to care. She just lived her life gracefully. Mom, you are finally willing to let Little Egg out. Little Egg is suffocating to death. White light flashed in the dormitory, and the figures of Little Egg, Little Golden Dragon, Little Dumb Cow, and Xiaoli all appeared. Little Egg jumped into Hushi's arms and complained loudly. Bad Mom, you didn't let Little Egg out for so long. When the bad guys bullied Mom, Little Egg wanted to come out to beat the bad guys, but Mom didn't allow it either. Little Egg was really suffocating in there. Little Golden Dragon also held his paws and said angrily, That group of idiots dared to say that you cheated and dared to question your pill refining ability. Hee, now they should have suffered the consequences. I heard that Caillou was sent into the Spirit Extinct Valley. He will suffer now. Haha, he deserves it. That's what you get for framing boss. Little Golden Dragon was different from Little Egg. He could change his shape at will. Although he couldn't restrain all his aura, as long as someone didn't use divine sense to investigate or break into the enchantment, no one would find out his presence. But who would use divine sense to detect a fly? Hashi smiled and said, "Okay, stop arguing. My roommate just happened to be not coming back tonight. Let's go check out the whole academy." In the past few days, in addition to the cultivation, Hashi has been stepping around in the academy to inquire about the situation. However, people came and went during the day, so it wasn't easy to do anything. At night, the students were not allowed to leave the dormitory at will, so there was no clue about the search for Wu Qi. Little Egg, you first hide our cultivation base. Don't let spiritual power leak. Shaoli, you pay attention to casting illusions, so that people can't see our existence with the naked eye. Little Dumb Cow casts the enchantment. If anyone approaches, tell me immediately. Hashi also searched for a long time before confirming that the president's office of the Academy Student Council, which was the room where Lu Jishi was, had a detailed map of the academy. Miracle Healer Academy was too big, and there were enchantments in almost every place. If they searched by themselves, it would take a long time to find Wu Qi. Little Golden Dragon heard that Hashi had assigned tasks to everyone, but he wasn't assigned with anything, and he immediately said in a hurry, "Boss, what about me? What about me?" Hashi smiled and said, "Of course you are scouting in front. Only your ability can avoid some simple arrays, and let us enter the Academy Student Council. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.